Welcome to the crew of Splice Poetry Parade. Y'all are all crew members this evening. We don't demand money for dues.
Throw me something, mister.
Oh, you got it. You got it. I knew someone asked. We got some LitWire throws here. Anybody else need a throw? Throw over here. We got some koozies up there in the top row. Oh, I made it up there. I got a couple more. Hold on. Who else needs one? Where you at? Where you hiding? One over here.
Yeah.
Back over there. They whip pretty good. On the stairs. Oh, went over there. We have a delightful night of poetry and performance for you this evening. It's going to be a magical evening with Daiquiri up first, and then Johannes Göransson up next after him. And to introduce Daiquiri is our lovely own golden boy, Henry Goldkamp. Let's let me a little chatter up here. Come on in.
All right, welcome everybody. This is the Splice Poetry Series at your service. Let's begin with Daiquiri Rene Jones. That's right. I first saw Daiquiri perform years ago at the Dogfish Reading Series, and to put it as simply as possible, was extremely moved. I was moved at the effervescent approach to poetry making, noting the lack of paper and presence, of course, of heart. There was a genuine purity of thought which unfolded before the audience, each newborn word cradled in the ear. I'd never seen or heard anything quite like it at the time, a single pluck or two of string filling an entire house, making way for language. Or was it the string of words which made room for that sound? So goes the paradox of a spoken thought. It wasn't until later that I realized Daiquiri falls within the lineage of improvisational poets such as Steve Benson, Ronaldo V. Wilson, or even the spontaneous incantations of Cecilia Vicuña. Each of these poets, Daiquiri included, invite the listener into a position of the driver's seat, seeing in so-called real time the poem's hyper-process and creation, sometimes with the addition of backing jazz bands, Benson, masks, Wilson, or textiles, Vicuña. But for Daiquiri, it is the poet's ancient instrument, the harp, which carves a path for his existential narratives to take a spin through. His poetics is a combination of mind and gut, following the intestinal instinct of a thread of thought. Harp strings were traditionally made of animal gut, after all, and the sound of which results in a syncretism of life after death, piloting the sound of now. This is not a poet concerned with the page, as most understand it, as much as with air itself. And it's not trite to say it's the sound waves which bend the line as we follow along. So light is his footfall, and by design, our own shoes. Let no lead foots be in the building tonight. In a 1992 improvised performance with the Splatter Trio, Steve Benson ends where this evening begins. That's why you're here, in order to be surprised and disturbed, inside out, where your heart becomes a metaphor and your guts become a symbolic structure. It's escaping. Gas is meaning. So let's fill up our tanks on the sweet sound of sugar and break this vehicle down. Put your hands together for our first tenor of this evening, Daiquiri Rene Jones.
That was the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me. Wow. What? So, I'm excited to be here. I guess I don't know what to say. You know, I mean, I know I should let the poetry, you know, speak for me. But yeah, that never really set well for me because I can speak for me just fine. I don't need the poetry, you know, try to put words in my mouth. But poetry has. It's been on my mind in a sense where, I guess, I was asking myself this question the other day. What comes first, poetry or singing? I know a lot of people will say poetry because they're biased, but really song comes before language itself. So therefore it comes before poetry. Poetry has this interesting relationship to language. It's very loyal to language and meaning. well, because it's loyal to language, and I don't know how many of you are allies of like structuralist thought, but because it's connected to language, it's connected in some way to the idea of reality. Hence our love of the idea of authenticity in poetry, the idea of the real, our real lives, our real stories, this connection with the world as we know it. And that never really sat right with me either. But, that's besides the point. Actually, it's not besides the point, because I did want to read a quote before I started. And doing research for this piece, it's a quote by Montale that says, "Poetry is only an error of nature." Error of nature. Like language is alien. It hijacks its way into your brain. It downloads your thoughts. Language has no relationship with things as we perceive it. It has its own agendas. And like that, poetry in this way has these little mirrors between words. It looks at itself constantly. It's always watching itself. It exists within a camera sphere. I think the relationship with poetry is, it's a very conscious relationship with itself. It's like it's one of the few art forms that actually speak. But besides the point, I want to get started with a poem. And this poem is a poem about, well, I'll just let it speak for itself. It doesn't really need to read it time. Actually, never mind that. There's actually, as I'm looking at my material here, there is a poem that inspired me that I'll read first, and I know that's also, considered you're not supposed to read other people's poetry when you're reading your own poetry, but it was too good, and it relates to the work, and it's by a poet, and feel free to write his name down, Henry Glassinge. I mean, a lot of people don't know about him. It's kind of hard to find him on Google, depending on how you spell his name. But this is his piece on Orpheus. Of course, Orpheus being a key figure in thinking about poetry, because it's Orpheus, of course, that is inventing poetry. His decapitated head, which I think that violence is perfect for the origin of poetry as it floats and sings. Anyway, so it's called Never Look Back. It's easy to hate snapping turtles, honeybees and snakes, our coiled hair, your eyes burning like blue transformers, darkness was the script. The promise is the flashlight, never look. And the fine print in the water, in the air, and the soil, candy wrappers and tooth decay, we ran like scattered marbles, ants over sugar cubes, so far ahead of our own intentions, we were unable to catch ourselves. We never, it stops there, never, we never. So it's kind of its spirit is against poetry. Poetry is so involved in looking at itself, to never look back, to never edit, to never, get involved in the details of a poem. It was really moving to me. So I wrote this next piece when I was struggling with what it was for me to do poetry, and I wrote it a few years ago. Yeah, I'll just read it. Red gums the horizon. Over the ochre shed, threading our clotheslines. This is Foxtrot. Over. Red soaks the power. Foxtrot, this is Alpha. Over. I put on my small silhouette like a spacesuit. And the cruise the radios amidst the static of katydids and cicadas. Son, some archaeologists dig with telescopes multitudinous as a dragonfly lens. Over. Where are we going next? I don't like being in the dark so much. Over. Emergency alerts and alarms. We disembark from a sea breaking with the sky. Under starlight and sifting through your Doppler shift blues, bruised velvets and grays. I was worried. You were elsewhere. Darkness cannot cast dark, it is dark as darkness is. Light flickers and falls and fails, paints while darkness is painted. Over. Soft muted heat, Louisiana, tuning dials, dialing in, Foxtrot and Alpha, Theta, Hotel and Echo, a Romeo. Son, some of this is about parts of me. Parts of me stay still. You know where to find me under the sun, my roots tongue out like a negative cloud, sucking in the water that falls. My body is the other spore, pocket of pockets. I try to pull them out, deny them, but they are new translations of me. Over. What are you saying, Dad? Over? Define fidelity, the geography between us forbidden. A ship swallower, a sunken pleasure. Constellations of billions of years and light years apart. Only in common is what is kin, star compositions, stardust composers. You were never the other voice on the radio. You're always over and out. So that was the first of a series. And the series I wanted to call, Say Never, and in it I had to really think about my relationship with poetry because, like so much of my work is made the day of. It might be made an hour before, or sometimes it's made as I write it. So that relationship, made me feel a little uneasy about the idea of legitimacy and like falling within the line of poets, like where is the poetry come from? Let's see, let me pull this piece up. But I would want to do things to become closer to the poetry. I would sleep on my books, that idea that the words would merge with my dreamscape. I would start reciting poems throughout the day. I would try to walk in a meter. I got really into the idea of poetic impression, just the impression that a poem makes. And maybe it was fine to be less concerned with its relationship to what was real, in the real poem. So there was a reading I did in, it was in, I think it was Marfa. This is where I have this increased relationship with this idea of the poem and the real. And it's made very explicit in the game, in the poem about video games. Booting up, turning on. It might have caused the overload, the erosion of forests by more forests, populating and despawning across a life cycle of pixels, The overlay decaying landscapes that would lick the skin between fruit and rind. The high score to a screenplay of kill, gather, escape, gather. Noon between the avatar and the wrist. Consulting with forms, sharing knowledge with all the ecstasy of ignorance. As the glass gleams, thinking of us. Dreaming the dreamer in its paths, our trailblazing, consorting in photo emotion, developing into the image of men. The last thing I see in our eternal war between work hours and sleep is that my character becomes always this sea of red, angry, vulnerable, hurt, vengeful, like a biblical plague of locusts and blood and power gone wrong. And that was that piece. And you know, I began spending a lot of time working on video games. You know, I know it's odd to say working on video games. You know, but the idea that play is just this, you know, casual, disposable thing. You know, I always thought was ludicrous. You know, Ludin's play. It's just, it's a fundamental drive of, you know, like what creates, you know, joyful consciousness itself, the interplay of like sense, the interplay of meaning, and the pursuit of something more. And I thought, because we live in such a world that is so devoted to simulation, you know, playing in the game, you know, seemed to be a way of like celebrating like kind of this meta-analysis between like what is, you know, what is prescribed, and what is this genuine, you know, kind of like orgasmic pleasure. So I played a lot of video games, and I grew my hair out. And, you know, I left video games again for poetry because poetry was more pure. You know, like a lot of other art forms, they might deal with a certain sense the body has, like painting. You know, the way you might think that, you know, certain brushstrokes might emulate a sea, you know, or a sky, or a mountain, you know, or blush, you know, or the lucidity of an eye. But I think poetry doesn't have that relationship with the senses. Sound poetry does. So I tried to become a sound poet for a while, but you know, it didn't feel, it didn't have the same grip that you know, that written and spoken poetry. Huge difference between the two, but both of them had a certain grip that sound poetry just didn't with me. So I, you know, it was my first job, where I made more than like, you know, minimum wage, and I saved up and I bought a harp. And really inspired by, you know, like this story of Orpheus, I began, you know, playing around with the idea of, you know, a relationship between sound and words as separate, you know, sound against words, sound with words, this relationship with word and sound together, creating this tension and this vibrance. And I like the tension between something that had a relationship with meaning that was really centered on the refrain, and something that was always beyond reference. And with that, I created a band called Apocryphal Lipstick. And there's this track, and I guess I'll prep the music first for it. There is no love between us, Sam. There is no future. In fact, there is no future even. The soft serve machines are down, the pool table is not all there. Aquariums are always closed on our days off. We have let our days off without leashes, and only a few of them are coming back from the thickness. Forests grow out of dead lives. The other night I heard knocking but wouldn't answer it. I could feel the outside air broken open, but date night is canceled again. The 7-Eleven is closed, and sometimes I stare at people tripping over their shoelaces like I would a grist fire. Pierogies are off the menu. I'm out of data. Everyone's rehearsing how to do nothing while an oversaturation of dreams stains the inside behind eyes. They're going to feed us to the sea in the wingspan of blinking along the witless borders of a vapor. A million passports denied as new worlds pop out of kernels of old worlds. We have been driving for miles, restless as falling, no rest stops. We are some days a bureaucracy of ghosts, some days a waiting room, the cold reading of a script, and I don't have time to practice all the grief when poem lines trace a splinter of freeways. Industries, whole industries are flickering between us, more thin than skim. There's something stirring underneath the carbonated sky. You lick your lips and there's a surge in the air. We are making it sexy, though we say we were taken hostage. We were taken hostage, we'll say. You know, the relationship between, you know, me and the instrument, well, the instrument, of course, you know, you can see it as an extension of the self. The instrument is an extension of a limb, an extension of an organ, an extension of desire itself. We use it to make, to create. As I use the instrument, I wonder if somewhere in the conversation that I'm trying to make with the world, that the communication coming from the instrument has its own character. And I wonder if that character, its relationship to my voice, my character, is somewhat entangled in a way that might be suffocating. The relationship between an instrument, well, it is a medium. You get in your instruments. They are a vehicle to take you somewhere. Your will, your desire, your want, your power. In this, I feel like a symbiotic relationship develops between the instrument, the tool, the thing, and you. There was this idea I was wrapped around in my head, the idea that maybe besides objectivity, subjectivity, that maybe the trajectory of the path, was what mattered. The path had to come from somewhere. It came from what I wanted, my heart, my dreams, my desires. And that the instrument, my way of getting there, was almost this prosthetic device. But then I realized that there was a language within the instrument, and the feedback from that language had been crowding what I wanted to say. And so after a long time, I decided to take the instrument, this instrument, and this recursiveness and destroy it. But what I realized was that my relationship had created this symbiotic relationship between me world. And almost, well, if you think about symbiotic relationships, they're not familial. Two very different organisms without kinship create no offspring together, but exist interdependent, very queer relationship between bodies totally unlike one another, whose dreams cannot even be translated. And in understanding this, I decided that I would find a way to incorporate it into my work. So that's why tonight I'm going to announce a surgery that I'm going to have, and I'm going to put the heart directly into my heart. But it's very expensive. It might take a while. In the meantime, I wanted to find a communion between poetry and other things, which brings me back to another quote by another poet. Look him up too. Simon Misos. I'm spelling it right. He did this collaborative relationship with a more well-known poet, Erica Wright. And there was a line he said I'll never forget, and it said, "Poetry is beauty with all of the power of the hideous." Truth with all the creativity of a lie. And with that, I guess I'll start passing around my jar to raise money for the surgery. Thank you.
Hi, Daiquiri Rene Jones. Thank you. The current crises in U.S. poetics can be thought of as a conjoinment of two forces. One, the centrifugal forces of political ideologies scattering minds to the ends of their wits, and two, centripetal forces where an amassments of diverse poetics insights take flight, but in fixed circular orbits, straining towards a center, a moral or ethical center, to no avail. Then we can think of certain poets that manage to momentarily evade being crushed by this rude tug and tossing, just long enough to make new sense by way of new speak, thus sparking new think, by which a new poetics avails itself as interruption and refuge from these battered cultural landscapes we call country. Johannes Göransson, poetic works, translations, poems, criticism, commentaries, continuously code crack national speak abilities and disabilities, rocketing them up to the great unknown, we mean here, right here. Göransson's poems are actual updates on the way affects bop and roll in our times, from mourning to renewal to pause to amped up resolve. We get an infectious bounce of lines that carry over from piece to piece. There's gravitas, there's humilitas, constantia, abundantia, pietas, salubritas, and, as we shall see here in the flesh, comitas, by the pound. Johannes Göransson is the author of 9 books of poetry and criticism, most recently Summer 2022, and is the translator of several books of poetry, including works by Aase Berg, Jäderlund, Helena Boberg, and Yideum. His poems, translations, and critical writings have appeared in a wide array of journals in the US and abroad, including Fence, Lana Turner, Spoon River Review, Modern Poetry and Translation, Kritiker, and Lyrikvännen from Sweden. He's an associate professor in the English department at the University of Notre Dame, and together with Joelle McSweeney, edits Action Books. We're thrilled to have Johannes here with us tonight.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you all for coming out. I'm going to read from my last book, Summer. I came out last year. This is a book I started writing in 2016, in the summer of 2016. And I was in Sweden. I was hanging out there for the summer. It was the most beautiful summer. Swedes are always hoping for a beautiful summer, but they never get it because it's always rainy and cold, and then it's over. But this really was a summer. It was really beautiful, and there were lilacs blooming in June, and people were out and about, and it was beautiful. And I just wanted to be like in the Swedish summer that everybody had been waiting for their whole lives. But of course, it was the summer 2016, and so there was stuff happening, especially back in the US, and that was disrupting it. And then when I started to writing it, this was partly on my mind. I was trying to push that stuff out of my poems because I just wanted it to be summer, but of course I couldn't, and then it worked its way in. And there were other things that started happening, had a similar dynamic. Like I started writing in Swedish because I was in Sweden, I was reading Swedish poets, I was, surrounded by Swedish, so the Swedish came into my English as well, and kind of ruining or like setting off a strange rhythm in the language. So when I read, there will be Swedish words. You don't need to worry about what they mean if you don't know what they mean. Most of them will become clear after a while because a lot of them are repeated over and over. Sirena, means lilacs. Oskuld means virginity. Skuld means debt. Also on the cover here is a kind of glitched up version of a painting that was on the wall in my friend's studio apartment as I started to write this. It's of two girls in the late 20s, two cousins, and I started having all kinds of imaginary conversations with them, and sometimes they kind of became my daughters back home, and sometimes they became some messenger from history. Yeah, and then I went back to the US, and but I continued to write in this kind of space, sonic space or language space, and so this really is a poem that lasts from 2016 to maybe 2020 or 2019 or 2020. So it's not just that summer, but it's like the summer wouldn't leave me alone, and you will hear some evidence of that. But yeah, don't worry about the Swedish if you don't know it. I can't hear you. The lilacs are in bloom and the underworld is slow. I'm slowly listening to girls sing about the rabble in Syrenerna. They're at my door, pöbeln. The girls are in the lilacs, Syrenerna. I can't hear them. I have a telephone number tattooed on my shoulder, and the lyrics of the song on the radio seems to be, they're at the door, pöbeln. They're at the door, drömmen. It's not a dream, summer never ends. The currency has lost the language. Inside language, treacherous lilac language. Syrener, made for girls like me, for me, the lilacs bloom like little fingerprints, hundreds of bloody little fingerprints. I can't hear you. I'm listening to the radio. My wife is feeding me pomegranate seeds. She's feeding me with bloody fingers. It's summer. It's summer. I can't hear you. Det är sommar. I can't hear you. La la la. Jag håller på med dödsgrejen. Dikter om döttrar som inte är döda. I'm busy with underjorden. Where my hands are almost as white. Du är nästan lika vit som havet. In a war song. I krigssången. I can't see you. I havssången. You have such a pretty gauze in front of my eyes. I can't see the children. Their songs is crawling like summer, sommar. They're still alive. I'm still stained on the lilacs, which are Syrener. One thing is another. Inflation. Art is like silver, like bodies with silver on them. Quick. Like silver, summer crawls, I can't hear you. Two girls are seated in a painting from 1923, it's summer. In the painting, it's suicide, to be home while the rabble is at the door with books and photographs from war. The Cold War is almost over, and I'm almost 8 years old, and I almost have a necklace made from fox bones, a necklace made for summer at halsband, for ending the future, and hals for summer, a summer throat, summer music. It's sung by the ocean, havet. I wonder if I can hear havet now, or if I'm listening to the rabble. Pöbeln is at the door with 100 bloodied fingerprints, lilac hands in the leaves made for skin and silver, images of the underworld which I'm stealing from war, poetry, even though my daughters, döttrarna, still live, is the name of another painting. A figure is stabbing my bed. I'm not there. You can't hear me The rabble is too loud, singing my ocean song, Pöben, with pomegranate seeds in their mouths, and on my body is a messy photograph of my body being subjected to a treatment against inflation, which I now will call poetry. I will finish the treatment, but not yet, not until I learn how to fire the revolver. This is for Paul Andersson. This is a Swedish poet. How sick that the tree can't stå ut med mig, in the poem about children, döttrar som lever on ashes, like the bird who lives on the dead throat of the most beautiful mother of pearl. I must be a sick father of pearl, must be the sick one in that painting, in that song about havet on the radio. Do I have the fluid in me? I have sickness about summer, and döttrar run around like summer is a song. Syrenerna have blood fringes in mina ögon, in the painting of ruins. I can hear summer, you can hear the ocean. On the radio, I read numbers as deep as a summer's breath. How disgusting to be beautiful, says the tree to me about syrenerna, döttrarna, in the painting of a swan, in the drone song, in the shooting, in the fur around my pretty neck. There are lies, sommarlös I drönet, from the rabble. I cannot understand the debt I'm in. I'm in a fox fur at the shooting range. There's a drone that drowns out and lies crawl in the fur. I'm humming the rabble's song. It sounds som havet. I'm drowning I havet. It sounds like children are shooting each other in summer. It sounds like I am their mother of pearl, father, their suicide, father. It's the same thing. I am a virgin in noise, oskuld I oljud, unsound. It's hard to be an unanimal when the radio tells me I'm disgusting when I try to write this song, when I try to remain a virgin without debt. Summer is my debt, no poetry is. I can't pay for it with mother of pearls. I can't pay for it. I'm the one reading Eva Kristina Olsson's Antigone with körsbärsblommor I Kungsträdgården. A lot of these are references to pop songs that I was listening to on the radio, so that's körsbärs, the cherry blossoms in the King's Garden. It's like a dance song. There were lilacs, my body was Juned. I was reckless with my breathing. I was handsome, even for June, even with the peculiar dew dripping down my forehead. I could tell what I was looking for, a sound, ett ljud, nej, ett oljud för min oskuld, a little sound of debt, the virgin sound of nightingales when they are poisoned. I was poisoned. Jag drack giftet. Jag var golvad. And now on the floor I can't breathe. I make a sound. I should never have taken these seeds in my mouth. Now I can't leave. Sommaren pours through my throat. My throat was made for summer. It's horrifying to play king me with that beautiful throat in summer. I refuse to bury this body, Lilian, in summer, but I can't hear it. Hear detta är en elegi. King me, detta är en elegi till sommaren. King me out. makes summer sense to me, who's alone with my aftermath, that the teeth have been torn out of the mask that represents mimicry. Nobody wants to tell me with summer breaths where it hurts or who was injured when I broke into a toxic garble with a hissing snake for a heart. When I was sweaty and tired, I learned to kiss in the underworld with my mother tongue and my hymns to inflation already sung in a dazzling killer language. I learned to speak in the most toxic state with my father tongue while the war was at war with a war and a mother. War took place between summer and my virgin arms. I know the emergency state of being alive has little to do with my tongue. It has to do with the lies I tell my children with my father tongue. I'm just interviewing them for roles in Lilac Antigone. It's beautiful, but it's also a joke. I have a dead child. In summer, I've trashed summer eyes with a million nightingales because I'm reading the plays of Eva Kristina Olsson. I tell the man who makes rifles, I'm not almost a girl, I'm almost animals, because I'm closer, even closer to God. I tell him, you're not closer, you are so close. God has your face. To write a poem about violence while towers collapse is my scam. A summer scam. I do it while drinking milk of paradise out of a rifle. But I have to get rid of it, the rifle, before the party starts, the party of no. To enter Undervärlden, you need a picture of yourself with a noose, with a violent leaf in your mouth. That's childhood. These are my idiot arms. I'm holding a child, I'm reading the captions, I'm carrying flowers. Each one represents a massacre. Each infant represents mimicry. I have döttrar i slakthuset. I miss them, men jag är inte längre rädd. In my mirror reflections, I drink the milk of 1,000 bullets. A massacre language. My wife says, you're anti-Orpheus. She also says she is writing ransom notes for my liberation. Come and get me. I'm home. I'm exterminating home. I'm eating the seeds of summer. I'm reading captions. It's hard to write. It's hard to dance with a baby's breath. The rabble wants to tear apart my shitty Orpheus mask because I hate more purely than they do when I write poetry for the masses. I make $1 million and I pay it to know what's happening to my mouth. It's not good. The seeds taste acrid, like levothyroxine. They are pomegranate seeds. The rabble tells me what is happening to my body is skulden. Sommaren är min, men skulden är din. För du läser denna dikten. I want this poem to be antimatter, but it's more beautiful under matter, underground matter, under the poison tree. The pills are lavender and shaped like tears. I'm watching lilacs become matter. I'm a child of film. I melted while singing $1 million to pay my debt. I perfect my crime. The pills taste like licorice. The sun tastes terrible in the butterfly pavilion. I hate the sun and want to kill it with kill poems. I write love poems for my daughter, my debtor. A debtor is what I am, for I need to pay for a new underworld where I can continue to betray you. Kill the lights. My sub-sister speaks to me, tells me kill the lights, tells me we have to go now, have to join the rabble, have to set this room on fire, have to photograph the ruins, have to call that sublime, have to call levothyroxine milk, have to call this poem all the garbage in the sun, have to pay for it with ashes, antimatter, antibody, anti-breaths. Can you give me some money so I can buy my daughter back? Because poetry is not enough, or it's too much. An inflation. I have to cut the words so I can buy min dotter tillbaka. I can't buy her back, but she exists in her absence. I can draw her lungs in the garden. The dogs are loose again, says the neighborhood kid who's starving. Outside Giovanni's room, we write poems with burning branches. I write my daughter's name. It's a poem about summer. I'm a connoisseur of rotten flowers, so I take a photograph of my torso. My foreign torso has to have Syrener on it. Will you buy the photograph for $44,000? It won't be enough for my daughter. It will pay the debt, the mother debt. I'm an expert on the fodder debt. Fodderskulden, silverskulden, trash the cameras. I ask my arteries about oxygen. Summer, why doesn't it end? I ask the lilacs about min dotters ansikte. I ask min dotters ansikte, how can I pay the debt? I pay the debt. I ask Neliko about the no, about her breath. Why does it hum? I ask my hands when I have finally collected all the butterflies in Giovanni's room, why they can't write poems about butterflies. They write a poem about butterflies. It's a kill list. And the sun is in the first line, and poetry is in the next to last line, and in the last line I carry my daughter like lilacs. I can't sing en bagvisa för mina döttrar in Giovanni's room. I tell my daughter, the flowers I've planted for you are evil, and Pöben writes back, en bagvisa, it goes to a syre. Du är syrenen i mina lungor, är det poesi. I want my daughter to be a message, but I can't read her breaths. The rabble is all about messages. They knock on the wall. 3 knocks for drowning, 2 knocks for shooting, and 1 knock for döttrar. I get 1 knock, 1 knock, 1 knock. I say, stop sending me messages about nature. I know what nature is. I own its evil flower. My nature is to be afraid of angels that embroider on their winding sheets a poem that goes like this: oxygen, oxygen, oxygen. By the way, I brought a few books if anybody wants to buy one. Whatever you can afford, it's fine. This will be a last part. So the last part of the book is a long poem that goes on for a page, so I'm just going to read a short section from it. That's the 4th part. It's called The World. Now I want to tell you a secret about my debt. No, it's about lilacs. I'm carrying a revolver. The whole room is chock full of the world's tiniest holes. Tell me the answer to the riddle. It's almost over. No, look at you. Why are you crying in the sun? In the sun, I write lilacs, lilacs, lilacs. No, I listen to bodies in the meadow, and they tell me lilacs, lilacs, lilacs. Who am I? You are nobody. Who am I? the rabble. In the meadow, everything burns like flowers. On the radio, my heart has a tiny hole in it. Who am I? In the allegory, I'm in the meadow. Someone is shot. The caption says, "This corpse is your debt." I say, I'm not dead, but summer is almost over. No. Thanks.
One more time for Johannes Göransson, everyone, and Daiquiri Rene Jones. There's this kind of dated, at this point, sociology book I've been poking around, and a questions posed by Robert D. Putnam. The book's called Bowling Alone, The Collapse and Revival of American Community. So you get the gist. And in it, there's a question, is erosion of social capital an ineluctable consequence of modernity, or can we do something about it? And so this is their little closeout section where we just want to thank you, the audience, for truly doing something about it. We at Splice think about y'all a lot, and we think about how wonderful you are. Half of listening to this poetry reading, yes, the poets are here. That's our job, is to bring those poets in. And y'all's job is to be here and to listen to it. And I just want to say, I think we're both really good at our jobs. Half of it is listening to the poet, but when I listen to the poet, I also hear us, you, listening. And you're truly one of the best audiences we could ever hope for. The consistent people coming through, popping in, it means so much to us. So we have a sort of an odd underworld here, since we've sort of been brought there. But this is an underworld in which we do have the option to leave. And so we thank you for coming back to this underworld time and time again. And we hope that you're gassed up about it, you know? Gas it up. Tip your filling station attendant. Go get gassed up some more. Talk about it. Talk about your own poetry. Talk about your lives with one another. And buy books, right? Buy the book. But that's, I guess, all we really wanted to say was just thank you, as always. Y'all are the best. Good night.